I faked a painful sex disorder for 8 months. Friends donated to my treatment fund. Marcus spoon-fed me soup while I invented medical jargon. Everyone thinks I'm the victim of some rare condition. The truth is, I built an entire illness to conceal something more obscene. What I've done can't be undone. Now Marcus lives in our spare room, communicating through sticky notes. Our therapist calls his silence emotional neglect. My mother sends herbal remedies. But my real disease is terror that he'll excavate the full truth before I can reframe it. If he finds the texts, the architecture of my lie collapses. I'm writing this because last night I heard him tell the cat she doesn't get to rewrite this. You need to understand how a joke about preferring celibacy became a weapon. The part that broke him, the part that made him stop speaking, has nothing to do with the fake diagnosis. That was just the bait. I was always the funny one. At parties, I'd deliver the perfectly timed roast that made Marcus blush while everyone howled. He loved that about me, how I could diffuse tension with a well-aimed barb. What he didn't realize was that my humor had become a smokescreen for a deadness spreading inside me. For months, I'd feel his hand on my hip at night and freeze. Not because of any physical pain, because I felt nothing. And feeling nothing seemed worse than feeling pain. Deadness started after I slept with my coworker David at a conference in Cleveland. It was a single, stupid night in a Marriott. I told myself it didn't count because we were drunk, because Marcus and I had been fighting, because David's attention felt like proof I still existed. When I came home, I thought I could just forget. But my body remembered. Every time Marcus touched me, I saw David's face, so I stopped letting Marcus touch me. At first, I made excuses, headaches, stress. My period, but Marcus is patient and attentive. He started researching, gently suggesting we see a doctor together. That's when I invented vulvodynia. I learned the symptoms from a Reddit forum. I practiced saying the word until it sounded like something I actually had. Marcus believed me instantly. He held my hand while I fake cried in the car after an imaginary appointment where a doctor supposedly told me there was no cure, only management. Our friend Priya noticed first. We were at brunch and Marcus was explaining my condition to the server. Could they make sure nothing spicy touched my plate since inflammation was a trigger? Priya's eyebrows drew together. That's so weird, she said. My cousin has vulvodynia and she says spicy food has no effect. I laughed too loud. Every case is different, I chirped. Marcus squeezed my hand proudly, but Priya's stare lingered. I felt a flicker of pride that my lie was convincing, then immediate shame that pride was my dominant emotion. I should have stopped there. Should have told Marcus I'd misremembered the diagnosis. Instead, I doubled down. I created a fake email address for Dr. Sandeep Malhotra and forwarded Marcus articles about chronic pain during intercourse. I bought a medical-grade pelvic wand online and left it in our bathroom where he'd see it. I joined support groups and posted heartfelt messages about my journey, using language I'd stolen from real sufferers. Marcus started doing all the cooking, all the cleaning, tiptoeing around my flare-ups. David, meanwhile, had moved to another department. We hadn't spoken since Cleveland, yet he was still ruining my life just by existing in my memory. The first small consequence came when Marcus stopped initiating completely. He started asking permission to kiss me goodnight. Is this okay? Does this hurt? His voice got smaller. I told myself this was what I wanted, space. But I felt his withdrawal like a cold front moving in. Our therapist, Dr. Chen, praised Marcus's sensitivity. He's really attuned to your needs, she said. I nodded, mascara staining my cheeks from manufactured tears. Marcus beamed at the compliment. The dramatic irony made me dizzy. Here was this good man, learning to be better, all based on a fiction I'd authored. Priya cornered me after a session. You need to tell him, she said, her voice low. We were in the parking lot and rain was starting to spot the pavement. Tell him what? I kept my voice light. That whatever this is, it's not just physical. I've seen you, Maya. You're not in pain. You're in hiding. She knew. She didn't know the details, but she saw the shape of my deception. I told her she was being paranoid, that she couldn't possibly understand the complexity of chronic pain. Then I got in my car and blocked her number. If she was going to be disloyal, she didn't get access to me. By month 4, the lie had its own gravity. Marcus had organized a GoFundMe for my alternative treatments. Our friends donated $500. I used it to buy myself a new iPad. I told myself I'd pay it back eventually. The truth bomb dropped on a Tuesday. Marcus came home early with flowers, yellow tulips, my favorite, and a brochure for a pain clinic in Scottsdale. I've been saving, he said, his eyes bright. We can go for 2 weeks, really focus on getting you better. The flowers trembled in his hand. I saw the hope on his face, and for the first time I understood the cost of what I'd built. This wasn't just a little lie to avoid an uncomfortable conversation. This was a cathedral of deception, and people were praying in it. I told him I needed to think about it, that the pressure of a fix was triggering my anxiety. Face fell, but he recovered quickly. Of course, baby, whatever you need. That night I lay awake and realized I had two choices: confess everything or burn down the cathedral with him inside it. I chose option 3. I made the joke. We were at his work barbecue and his boss asked when we were having kids. Marcus laughed and said, "We're working on it." I snorted, too loud, too sharp. Honestly, I'd rather be celibate forever than keep up the charade. The silence that followed tasted like copper. Marcus's boss coughed. Someone changed the subject, but Marcus just stared at me, the humiliation draining the color from his face. The fallout was immediate. Marcus didn't speak on the drive home. When we got to our apartment, he walked straight to the spare room and closed the door. I heard the lock click. The next morning, a yellow sticky note appeared on the coffee maker. Talked to Dr. Chen. She says we need space. I'll be in the spare room until I figure out my next steps. My stomach dropped. He'd skipped straight to next steps without even a fight. I texted Priya from a burner app, unblocking her just to beg for advice. She read my message and didn't reply. The first external crack. Then came the discovery. Marcus's sister Lena came by to pick up his laundry. He'd asked her to. She found me on the couch, surrounded by the medical equipment I'd scattered for verisimilitude. The pelvic wand, the ice packs, the essential oils. Her lip curled. "My brother is devastated," she said flatly. "He thinks he's failed you. He thinks his needs are abusive." I started my rehearsed speech about chronic pain being invisible. She cut me off. "I saw you last Thursday at the wine bar on Elm, laughing with some guy in a suit, David." I'd met him for a closure drink. It had seemed important at the time. Lena didn't know David was the affair, but she knew I was capable of laughing, of being alive. "Marcus deserves better than your performance," she said, and left with his laundry basket. The breadcrumb dropped. Marcus had been talking to someone at work who'd been through something similar. Someone named Jenna. I spiraled. I created a fake email account pretending to be David, sending myself an apology for harassing me during my medical crisis. I showed it to Marcus as proof I was the victim. He read it slowly, his face blank. "This seems convenient," he said. It was the first time he'd voluntarily spoken to me in days. I doubled down. "Are you calling me a liar?" My voice hit that perfect wounded note I'd practiced. He didn't answer, just went back to the spare room. That night I heard him on the phone. "I don't know what's real anymore," he said. The words cracked something in my chest. For a moment I almost knocked on his door, almost told him everything. Then I remembered the GoFundMe, the tulips, the hope in his eyes. I couldn't. So I did the opposite. I posted a photo on Instagram of my medical devices, captioning it, "Grateful for a partner who loves me even when I'm broken." The likes poured in. The validation felt like armor. Marcus didn't react to the post. He'd stopped following me 3 days prior. The situation went nuclear when his work performance review came up. Marcus had missed deadlines, been distant in meetings. His boss, who'd heard my celibacy joke firsthand, called him in. I found this out because I logged into his email. His password was still our anniversary date. The idiot. The email was professional but concerned. "We need the old Marcus back. Whatever's happening at home, leave it there." I deleted it, then panicked. What if Marcus had already seen it? What if he was blaming me for his career stall? I needed to regain control of the narrative. I called his boss and, voice shaking with rehearsed vulnerability, explained that Marcus had been struggling to accept my diagnosis, that he'd been pressuring me, that I was considering leaving for my own safety. The boss listened, silent. "Thank you for telling me," he finally said. I hung up feeling victorious. Marcus couldn't afford to lose his job. He'd have to come back to me, play the supportive partner, maintain the lie. My worst decision came the next morning. Marcus found me in the kitchen, making his favorite pancakes, a peace offering. He looked at the plate, then at me. "Did you call my boss?" His voice was flat. I feigned confusion. He pulled out his phone, showed me the call log. "He said you sounded distressed, that I'd been pressuring you." The trap had snapped shut. I had 2 seconds to choose my defense. I went nuclear. "Maybe I did call him. Maybe I needed someone to take my pain seriously, since you clearly can't." I flipped the script, making his inquiry the betrayal. "You checked his call log. That's controlling, Marcus." I saw the confusion flicker across his face. He'd come prepared to discuss my lie, and I'd made him the villain. He walked out without eating. I threw the pancakes in the trash, then retrieved them, photographing the mess for my chronic illness support group, captioning it, "Some days the depression wins." grateful for the people who understand. The performance continued, even when the audience had left the theater. That's when the breadcrumb about Jenna became significant. Marcus started coming home later, his face less drawn. He'd hum while making coffee. One sticky note read, "Jenna recommended a good book on trauma, leaving it on your side of the bed. No pressure to read." The generosity of that note, the fact that he was still trying to help me, even from his exile, should have broken me open. Instead, I snapped. Jenna was a coworker who'd gone through a similar health crisis with her ex. I'd seen her at the holiday party, all sharp cheekbones and knowing eyes. She was the one who'd told Marcus about the support group where I'd been posting. She'd validated his suspicions. I found her on LinkedIn and sent a message from a fake profile, "Stay away from my husband." She blocked the account instantly, and I later learned, forwarded the message to Marcus with a note, "This is unhealthy. You need to document everything." Documentation, the word echoed. Marcus had always been meticulous. The breaking point arrived on a Thursday. I'd been drinking wine from the bottle, scrolling through old photos of us. In every picture, Marcus looked at me like I was the answer to a question he was afraid to ask. The grief of what I'd destroyed hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled to the spare room door and pounded. "Please talk to me, please." The door opened. Marcus stood there, his face empty. "Okay," he said. "Let's talk." We sat in the living room, me on the couch, him in the armchair he'd moved in there weeks ago. He placed his phone on the coffee table, screen up. "I know you don't have vulvodynia," he said. I started to protest. He held up a hand. "I'm not asking, I'm telling you what I know. You never went to those appointments. I called the clinics. You were never a patient." The room tilted. I'd forgotten to cover that base. "What I don't know," he continued, "is why. And I need to know if I should bother finding out, or if I should just leave." My support system crumbled that night. I called my mother, sobbing, and told her Marcus was leaving because he couldn't handle my illness. She listened, then asked a question that stopped my tears midstream. "Maya, is there actually anything wrong with you?" The hesitation in her voice was new. My mother, who defended me when I shoplifted lip gloss at 13, who'd lied to my father about my grades, was questioning me. I hung up on her. I tried Priya next. She answered on the first ring. "Don't," she said. "Whatever you're about to say, just don't." Lena told me what she saw. Just stop. The line went dead. In the space of 10 minutes, I'd lost my alibi and my backup. Someone got hurt the next day. Not me, not Marcus. Lena came by to collect more of his things and found me on the floor of the spare room, holding one of his t-shirts. She didn't speak at first, just started packing his books into a box. When she picked up his copy of The Body Keeps the Score, a book about trauma, I snapped. "He's not the victim here." She dropped the book. "You're right," she said quietly. "The victim is my brother, who believed you when you said you were sick. The victim is my 13-year-old son, who gave you $20 from his allowance for your treatment fund." She pulled out her phone, showed me a text from her son. "Is Aunt Maya going to be okay? I prayed for her." The words were a physical assault. I had taken a child's prayer and used it to buy an iPad. Lena left without another word. I sat in the silence she'd created and realized the full toxicity of what I'd become. Marcus asked the direct question 2 nights later. He'd started packing his things in earnest. Boxes lined the spare room wall. He came into the kitchen where I was making tea I didn't plan to drink. "Did you tell him about us?" The pronoun landed like a punch. "Tell who what?" I asked, buying time. "David, did you tell David about our sex life, about the things I shared with you?" The room got very small. I had told David. I'd told him everything: Marcus's insecurities, his desires, the vulnerable texts he'd sent me after I'd started withholding. I'd shared them like they were jokes, like they were evidence of his inadequacy. I'd wanted David to see that I was desirable, that I had a man who loved me so much he'd beg. Instead, I'd handed a stranger the blueprint to destroy him. The setup happened the next morning. Marcus wasn't in the spare room. He'd left a sticky note on my bathroom mirror: "We need to talk tonight. 7 p.m. With a mediator present, I'm serious. If you're not there, I'll assume you're not interested in an amicable resolution." The word mediator was a cold shock. He'd never been litigious. He hated confrontation. The fact that he'd reached out to a professional meant he'd crossed some threshold where he no longer trusted either of us to manage this alone. I spent the day in a panic spiral, deleting texts, clearing browser histories, creating false trails. At 6:45, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line: "For your discussion tonight." The attachment was a screenshot of a text I'd sent David 8 months ago. It was a photo of Marcus asleep with a caption: "This is what forever looks like when you're settling." The worst truth revealed itself at 7:15 p.m. I'd shown up to the mediator's office, actually just a conference room at Marcus's work after hours. Marcus was there, along with a woman I assumed was the mediator. She was not. She was HR. Marcus placed his phone on the table. I'm going to show you some things, he said, and then I'm going to tell you what I'm doing about them. He started scrolling. Screenshots. Dozens of them, texts between David and me, not just from the affair period. After, I'd kept texting him complaining about Marcus, sending memes about unsatisfying married life, asking David if he thought about me. The last one was from 3 weeks ago. Sometimes I think celibacy would be easier than faking it with him. The joke that started this. The most damning detail came next. This one, Marcus said, his voice breaking, this is the one that cost me my promotion. He turned the phone toward me. It was a screenshot I'd sent David of a text Marcus had sent me during our intimacy drought. I know you're in pain, but I feel so unwanted. Is it me? Am I doing something wrong? Please just tell me how to fix this. Below it, my reply to David, lol, as if there's anything to fix. Poor little guy thinks his dick is magic. Newsflash, it's not even a good wand. David had forwarded that exchange to 3 of Marcus's coworkers. One of them was his direct competitor for the senior role. In the meeting where Marcus was supposed to present his case for promotion, they'd projected that screenshot onto the conference room TV. Just thought we should address the elephant in the room, the competitor had said. Marcus seems a little distracted by personal issues. The immediate fallout was a silence so complete it felt like drowning. The HR woman, Jenna, I realized, the same Jenna who'd been advising him, cleared her throat. Marcus has filed a hostile work environment claim, she said. But more relevant to you, he's also filed for a restraining order against David for harassment, and he's petitioning for an order of protection that includes communication through third parties. She looked at me. That means you will not contact him, you will not approach him, you will communicate only through his attorney. Marcus sat perfectly still, his hands clasped. I also want the money back, he said quietly. The GoFundMe, every cent. I'll be returning it personally with an explanation. The final shoe dropped as I was leaving. Marcus followed me to the parking lot. I thought for a moment that he was going to say something kind, that despite everything some piece of him still cared. Instead, he handed me an envelope. I was going to wait until after the legal stuff, he said, but you should know. Inside was a lab report. He'd had an STI panel done. I didn't think you cheated physically, he said, his voice empty. But I had to be sure, since you were so adamant about your condition. Turns out I'm clean. But now I know you were never sleeping with anyone, you were just too much of a coward to tell me the truth. He turned away. Oh, and Maya, I recorded our session with Dr. Chen, where you described your symptoms. I might need that for the fraud investigation. The aftermath spread like a toxin through every corner of my life. Marcus moved out completely the next weekend. Lena and a moving crew came while I was at work. When I returned, the apartment was half empty. His art was gone from the walls. The spare room was stripped to the mattress. On the kitchen counter, he'd left a neat stack of cash, exactly $500, the GoFundMe amount, plus a note for the therapy you'll need when you realize what you did. My mother called that night. She'd spoken to Lena. You stole from a child, she said, not a question. Mom, stop, just stop. I'm going to need some time. She hung up. The next day, a certified letter arrived. Marcus's attorney, petition for legal separation, citing fraud and emotional abuse. Social media became a minefield. Marcus didn't post anything, but Lena did. A single photo of Marcus in their childhood home, smiling genuinely for the first time in months, captioned, "Home is where the truth lives." The comments flooded in. So glad he's out of that toxic situation. She was always manipulative. I recognized the names, our friends, our community. I'd curated that community. Now it had exiled me. I deactivated everything. The silence was less painful than the evidence of my social death. My work life disintegrated. David had been transferred, but rumors traveled. People stopped inviting me to meetings. My manager called me in. There's been talk about your personal life affecting your professionalism, she said. I need you to take a leave of absence. When I asked if it was mandatory, she looked at her hands. It's strongly recommended. I'd become a liability. The irony, I'd pretended to be sick to avoid consequences, and now my pretense had made me terminally ill professionally. Current state, I live with my father now, in his guest room. Marcus and I communicate only through attorneys. He's declined to press criminal fraud charges if I sign the separation agreement without contest. I'm seeing a therapist who specializes in personality disorders. She won't give me a formal diagnosis yet, but she uses words like narcissistic traits and failure of empathy. The words fit like a cage. Marcus is dating someone new, a woman from his running group. He looks happy in photos his sister posts. I tell myself I should feel something beyond jealousy. I don't. I'm telling this story now because yesterday at the grocery store, I saw Marcus with her. She said something, and he threw his head back laughing. The sound reached across the produce section and punched through my ribs. I realized he was laughing at something genuine, something that didn't require him to edit himself. I understood, finally, that my joke about celibacy wasn't about sex at all. It was about my inability to be intimate with the truth. I'd rather be celibate forever than admit I'd manufactured an entire illness to avoid admitting I'd destroyed the one person who thought I was worth the work. What I've learned is broken and incomplete. I learned that humor is not a substitute for honesty, that vulnerability is not a weapon, that when you steal someone's trust, you don't just lose them, you lose the version of yourself that was worthy of them. I still catch myself wanting to spin this, to explain that Marcus was neglectful, that David was predatory, that my mother was distant. But my therapist makes me say it plain, I lied because I was too weak to face what I'd done. So when people ask why he won't talk to me, the man who once whispered his dreams into my hair, I tell them the truth. I turned his love into a public joke, his vulnerability into ammunition, and his kindness into a weakness to exploit. Now I'm fluent in the language of silence he taught me. I live in it. I deserve it. The joke's on me after all. Celibate forever, I wish. What I got was something far more permanent, invisible. And I built that prison myself.